Hello everyone. Welcome to the first guest speaker event of this academic year. Introducing David Langer, founder and CEO of GroupSpaces. After raising $1.3 million in investment and having previously worked for companies such as JP Morgan and Lehman Brothers, David stands at the forefront of young entrepreneurship. Please welcome David Langer.
So this is kind of interesting. It's a little timeline to see, so you can see kind of how long it takes to do things with a startup. So I started working on GroupSpaces in October 2006, but the actual GroupSpaces.com website, as you see it, launched in October 2007, and soon I graduated just before that, and one of the first things that I did, as well as launching the website, was raise some initial investment, which allowed Andy and I, two co-founders, to hire a couple of people, which was great, to start doing a bit more. We raised $150K. Then a year later, having rolled it out to a few hundred other societies at our university, we launched it at another 19 universities in the UK, and any other university society could sign up. Then you can see the groups that got signed up. Earlier this year, we worked with UCL Union to make it mandatory for societies to use GroupSpaces to help them with the member database management. And next month, we should hit a pretty cool milestone. What's happening? Cool. So on the entrepreneurship half of the talk, I'm going to talk about three things: ideas, marketing, and finance, and mainly raising finance. So on ideas, let's give you a question. How much do you think an idea is worth? Go on. Nothing. Did you just look at what I showed you? Kind of cheated. So, anyone disagree with that statement? Why do you disagree with that? Have you ever heard of anyone selling an idea, just the idea, for a new startup to someone else for any amount of money? Pardon? What's the Coca-Cola story?
The Coca-Cola story is, I think it was, I'm not exactly sure of the name. It was a person going to a small town in Georgia as a chemist, and the chemist had a recipe. He went there with literally just a kettle and a spoon and some startup investment. And he bought the idea for $5,000. He bought the recipe for $5,000 from this chemist who made some money off of it, but this was the recipe for Coca-Cola. And that's an idea. It all started with that idea.
Interesting. So, go on. I think the point that I'm trying to make with this is that the raw idea in itself with a startup, they're basically in the vast majority of cases, the raw idea itself doesn't have a huge amount of value. What really has value in building a company is determination. So there's a really awesome book that I'd recommend you all to check out called Founders of Work by a lady named Jessica Livingston, which is about 30, 10, 12-page interviews with founders of companies like Apple, PayPal, Blogger, Twitter, great technology companies of the last couple of decades, and it really brings down to earth what it's like to start a company. You see that people were a real mess back in the beginning often. It's quite amusing seeing what their companies are today and what they were right at the embryonic stages. And the last chapter of the book finishes with an interview. And I asked Jessica about this when I met her. And the last line says that the single most important driving factor determining whether a startup is going to be successful is how determined the founders are. And I really believe that, because there's going to be a lot of things that will change in the life of your startup. And the idea might change, the team that you're working with might change. There's all these things that will change. But if you keep focused and have that determination, that's what's really going to make you successful. So if you're thinking of doing a startup, I'd really focus on that element and ask yourself if you're really determined enough, because that's what is really going to lead you to be successful. So to give you an idea of the journey with GroupSpaces, so I said I started working on this about a year before GroupSpaces.com launched. Our initial idea was actually slightly different. So where it came from was the problem of wanting to find out what events were happening with the different clubs and societies at our university. So we launched this site, clickuni.com, where societies could post their events and students could find out what was happening. But the problem that we had with that was that some people uploaded events, some people didn't, and you got in this kind of catch-22 situation of needing to have all the events there for students to look at it, and for societies to want lots of students looking at it before they want to upload their events. And you could overcome that with marketing and reminding people to upload events. But in terms of building something really scalable as a company, it was going to be hard work and difficult to scale in a big way. But one of the things that we did when we were working on this was that we had a tool where people could send out emails to their members, like I showed you, an earlier version of that. And it allowed people to take the events in the newsletter and put them on the website. But actually the feedback we got was that just this tool to send out nice pro-looking newsletters to your members was really awesome. And that was one of the most valuable things that we'd created. And so what we realized was that the really awesome idea within this, we thought, was if we could create more tools like that solved all these problems that I mentioned earlier that people had running a society, that we had all the societies that we were talking to banging on about, that would be where the real value was. So that's where the GroupSpaces idea evolved. And there's other examples. A lot of other companies, like PayPal, for example, started off with trying to build a solution to port money between Palm Pilots to help people pay for bills. But when they put that on the web, they realized that that was really the big idea that they'd stumbled upon. And similarly with Microsoft, they started, I think, with something around programming languages. But then their eventual products that became successful that turned into being applications and operating systems. So it's this key ingredient of determination that will take you through that journey of pivoting with your idea and getting to the end of it that I'd encourage you all to focus on. And where do you start? You still have to start somewhere. So I had this really great quote from a guy called Paul Graham, who founded a company called ViaWeb in the 90s and sold it to Yahoo for 50 million. He said, look for things that are evil, broken, or stupid. So if you pause and think about that for a sec, different businesses that you've come across and why they were created. So for GroupSpaces, it was a combination of running societies was a bit broken and stupid. But if you can relate things that are part of your personal experience and are one of those three things, I think it's a really good place to come up with a potential business idea that you want to work on.